This program is about unsolved mysteries. Whenever possible, the actual family members and police officials have participated in recreating the events. What you are about to see is not a news broadcast.
Lee Selwyn, a popular Los Angeles disc jockey, had a fondness for motorcycles. Late one night, an argument led to a high-speed duel. Lee Selwyn was run down and killed. His murderer is still at large. 8 years ago, 25-year-old Michael Rosenblum vanished from the side of a Pennsylvania highway. His father believes Michael may have been the victim of foul play. In Florida, a 77-year-old Don Juan first steals the hearts of his victims and then their cash and jewelry. Also tonight, we'll update the poignant story of Roger Kane, a Los Angeles man apparently suffering from amnesia who left his home for a simple trip to the hardware store and vanished. Shortly after our broadcast, a viewer called claiming that Rogers is now living in Topeka, Kansas. When the police investigated this lead, the man had disappeared again. Perhaps you can help find him. Join me. You may be able to help solve a mystery. Six-year-old Lee Selwyn was a familiar face at the trendy rock and roll nightclubs that populate Los Angeles. He was a close friend to many popular rock stars and musicians. He was also a member of the late-night motorcycle riding crowd in Hollywood. On October 8, 1988, Lee Selwyn would fight for his life, the victim of a bizarre encounter with a crazed killer on the streets of Los Angeles. It was a fight for survival that Lee would not win. Lee Selwyn was a man who loved the nightlife of Los Angeles and was an important part of it. But simply because he looked different, Lee and his friends were arbitrarily targeted for murder. The sad irony of his death is that he was only an innocent bystander. The search for his killer has been taken to the streets of Los Angeles by his family and the rockers and bikers who loved him.
When he first got his motorcycle, I guess I was probably a little bit nervous about it, but I knew that he was careful, and I knew that he wouldn't take chances, unnecessary chances, wouldn't ride on the freeways. He wasn't a crazy kind of person, and so I really didn't worry about him.
At 2 a.m., October the 8th, Lee and 3 friends left a Hollywood nightclub, unaware of the danger that awaited them on the street. They rode 2 by 2, Lee and a friend named Beachy trailing Mike Auerbach and Rob Califat, who rode in front.
Driving along, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this truck comes flying by me. As he comes by, he dives in on me, laughing. He's screaming, ha ha, he's screaming something, I don't know, I couldn't hear, just laughing. Dives in on me. I look over at Mike, and in LA, this happens every day, but not so blatant.
What you doing? What are you trying to do? Huh? What?
I got infuriated because he was trying to kill me. And I'm really close to the guy, yelling at him, what the hell are you trying to do, trying to kill me? And he starts screaming at me and looking like a nut, on drugs, beer, whatever, psycho. Then he rolls his window down and spits in my face, right in my face. And Anybody could spit in their face gets irate. So I punched out his mirror, and he's still rolling his window down, up and down, spitting at me, growling, screaming. And then he starts reaching down like he's got a gun. I put my fist through his driver's window. As soon as I broke his window, he triggered, shot out of the intersection, and he's doing a Brody U-turn, and Mike and I look at each other, this guy's gonna kill us. He's coming after us. He's gonna mow us down. Does a U-turn, comes after us, we're flying down the street, and I'm just going. And I see his headlights bearing down on us. I'm just going, we still gotta get out of here. So we choose to go right, and as I look back, he comes flying through the intersection, screeching, bouncing, and comes to a sliding stop.
When Lee got to the intersection, he turned left, and the man in the truck followed Lee.
He's like a crazy, from what I've seen, he's a crazy maniac. Because he just wanted to kill me. He wanted to kill me.
Instead of Rob Caliphate, Lee Selwyn became the target of the driver's rage.
According to the witnesses, they were both going anywhere from 60 to 90 miles an hour. And here you have a young man who is known by his friends, known by his family as a very peaceable man who purposely avoids fights, even when confronted. And even if he is physically harmed by someone, he'll turn and walk away. You have a man like that who's out riding his motorcycle having fun, and all of a sudden he's in a situation where he's terrorized by someone in a car. He had to be in complete terror, and this terror lasted approximately about a 5-mile chase with this man right on his rear end. According to the witnesses, he was right on him, and he chased him until the time he actually hit him and drove him into a telephone pole. Lee, when he flew through the air, he flew close to 180 feet before he came to a rest. This is a murder. It's a homicide. Someone intentionally took the life of another person. It's a homicide.
The massive skull fracture Lee received in the collision was a cause of his death.
I received a call from Cedars. They said that he was in the intensive care. And I knew, I just knew. But I don't believe it yet. It's real, but it isn't real. He was such a big part of my life. He was my buddy. He wasn't just my son, he was my buddy.
At Lee's funeral, hundreds of his friends paid tribute to him. This music video, with footage shot at the funeral, was set to an original song dedicated to Lee's memory by the rock group Little Caesar.
It was amazing to see all these people who really cared. There's no way that can be consolation enough. It was a real tribute to who Lee was, by how many people were there and how many people really have shown how much they cared.
Lee's friends organized a rock concert in his honor, with special guest performances by Billy Idol and Julian Lennon, among others. The proceeds from the concert went to a fund, offering a reward to anyone who could bring Lee's murderer to justice.
A lot of people take the opinion that these guys are motorcycle gang members, when in fact there was 4 guys out having a good time. They happen to like to ride Harley-Davidson motorcycles. What really counts is who they are and what they're doing. These people weren't doing anything wrong that night, and they had a right to be out there riding their motorcycles and dressed the way they were. Lee Selwyn wasn't even the man who gave him the problem. It was another one of the motorcyclists, but this man was so bent on catching that person, it didn't matter to him who was on the motorcycle. He had to catch that motorcycle, and he had to run him over, and that's what he did.
It's incomprehensible to me to think that we could never find this man. I can't even imagine that I could live the rest of my life not knowing who did this.
Lee's killer drove a late-model two-tone vehicle with a chrome luggage rack and tinted windows. Most eyewitnesses agree that it was a Bronco 2 or a Chevy Blazer, and that its colors were red on white. Damage to the vehicle included a smashed outside rear-view mirror, a broken window, and a dented door, all on the driver's side. The vehicle would probably have come into an auto body shop for repairs sometime after October 8th. The driver of the vehicle is described as Caucasian, aged 28 to 32, with green eyes and reddish-brown hair and beard.
Incredibly, 4 years went by before police finally got the tip they'd been waiting for. After a recent rebroadcast of the story, a viewer called our phone center and told one of the operators that there was a man in prison in Georgia who had often bragged about running down a biker in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles police obtained a mugshot of the suspect. Lee's friends picked the man out of a photo lineup. His name is Franklin LeGrand Perkins. On July 30th, 1993, just 5 days before Perkins was scheduled for parole, he was arrested. 1 week later, he was brought back to Los Angeles by Detective Dan Andrews.
Most murder victims know their attackers, know their killers. But this is a case that just wasn't that way. This was a random event of a person who was basically minding his own business and unfortunately was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think it's very unusual to identify somebody and be able to solve a case after 5 years. It's a very good feeling.
Except for the most important fact, which is nothing can ever bring Lee back. I hope this will bring some closure to this 5 years of uncertainty and the pain that goes along with it. Finally, justice can be served, and also I'm grateful that this man is not out there committing other crimes and hurting other people and killing other people's loved ones.
One portion of the grief will be closed or dealt with. And I know that when I'm driving on the streets, I won't be looking at other cars. Wondering if that might be the guy.
In an earlier broadcast, we presented the story of Stephen Cox, accused of defrauding his friends and neighbors in Medford, Oregon, of $3.5 million. Thanks to our viewers, the 4-year search for Cox has ended. In 1982, Stephen Cox formed an investment company, offering his clients a 25% return on their money. Cox was able to convince many people in Medford to invest their life savings, totaling $3.5 million. At first, his business prospered. Then in 1984, it began to sour. On September 22, 1984, Stephen Cox vanished and allegedly took with him over $200,000 in gold, silver, jewelry, and cash. Within minutes of our broadcast in November, 6 viewers called our 800 number to report that Cox was living in Boise, Idaho, under the assumed name Robert Bradley Davis. However, just hours before the broadcast, Cox disappeared again, telling his wife he was going to Hawaii. Update: Stephen Cox has been arrested in Lake Mead, Nevada, 25 miles southeast of Las Vegas. 5 days after he fled from Boise, Cox checked into the Lake Mead Lodge Motel. He registered under the name John Strauss and listed an Arizona address.
He was not the normal guest. He stayed in his room all day long. He would only leave at night. Very seldom did he leave in the daytime. And we noticed that the license plates were not the same as he had put down on his registration card. And that made us a little suspicious, but yet nothing we could put a finger on.
2 weeks later, Edna Reed made a startling discovery.
One day when I was out on the grounds, I saw the guest come out of his room, Instead of putting his trash in the bin in front of his room, he took it up to number 35, which was several doors away. And when I went to empty the trash out of that bin, I found the crumpled up letter. And like any curious female, I read the letter. When I read the letter, I saw the part that said something about the Unsolved Mystery show being a bombshell. I showed the letter to my husband, Harold, and between the two of us, we decided it was time definitely to call the Rangers and tell them about the guest.
Lake Mead Park Rangers immediately ran a computer check and discovered that the car belonged to someone other than John Strauss.
On the morning of the 14th, we began to look for the person by going to the Lake Mead Lodge to see if we could identify, in fact, who he really was. When we got there, the vehicle was gone and the person was gone and had been gone for 15 or 20 minutes.
The next morning, park rangers spotted Cox's car and pulled him over in the parking lot of the Gold Strike Casino.
After we made the traffic stop, he produced identification, a driver's license issued to a Robert Davis. And we checked that name and date of birth through the NCIC computer and found that it was an alias used by one Stephen Cox and that there was a warrant for Mr. Cox. At that point, we placed him under arrest.
During a search of Cox's car, park rangers uncovered a small fortune.
When we looked in the passenger compartment of the vehicle and in the trunk, we found suitcases and other luggage-type bags filled with jewelry, rings, necklaces, collector-type baseball cards, some gold coins, silver coins. And I was really very curious to know why he had it in the vehicle and if, in fact, this was the stuff that he was wanted for taking in the first place.
April 2nd, 1988. Baldwinboro, Pennsylvania, a suburb of Greater Pittsburgh. 30 volunteer firemen gather on a steep bluff overlooking the Monongahela River.
I want you to pay attention. We're on the bases of trees and on level benches as we go down the hill. Look for anything that you find out of the ordinary.
At the suggestion of a psychic, they are here to search for the remains of Michael Rosenblum, a young Pittsburgh man who has been missing for over 8 years. For Maurice Rosenblum, this search is his latest desperate attempt to determine the fate of his son Michael, who disappeared on Valentine's Day in 1980 from a road that runs along the foot of the cliff.
There is not the slightest possibility, in my mind, that he could be out there alive. I pray that that 1 in 10 million chance would happen, but I just can't believe it. I just can't believe it. I guess you always have some hope. As long as I don't have a body, there's always hope.
Over the last 8 years, Maurice Rosenblum has spent almost $250,000 doggedly pursuing every lead to find his missing son. Strangely, many of those leads suggested that the authorities interfered in the investigation. Maurice's lonely quest has uncovered disturbing indications that an important document may have been forged. A questionable arrest warrant for his son was issued, and crucial evidence was ignored. The search for Michael has led to a scandal in which a police chief was fired and then reinstated after a hearing. Maurice Rosenblum is not satisfied with the investigation into his son's disappearance. Michael Rosenblum began experimenting with drugs during high school and soon became a heavy user of a prescription painkiller that altered his moods and made him erratic and irritable. Michael's life spun wildly out of control, but throughout, he retained the strong support and love of his family.
He was into drugs at the time that was a bad time for all the kids that were ever into drugs. There was a thing that just came out then called tough love. And it was supposed to be, the thing to do was tell him you're through here. You can't live here. You're out. If you won't live according to my rules, you're out. I had never done that. And the one time that I listened, that I did that, I never saw him again.
Let's get out of here. Don't worry about it. Let's just go. I'll talk to you later.
The night of February 13th, 1980, a month after he was released from a drug rehab program, Michael began acting abnormally. Barbara Rosenblum found a bottle of painkillers in his bedroom. She banished Michael and his girlfriend Lisa from their home. They left in Lisa's car.
I said to Michael, don't come back until you're completely off drugs, until you want to live your life the way you should. And that's the way it is. I've always faulted myself for that, and I probably will till I die. That I didn't say, okay, we'll try again. Maybe tomorrow will be different.
Michael, would you stop and wait for me? Michael!
The next morning, Michael awoke with a severe drug hangover. Lisa drove him to a local hospital, but he refused to be treated.
Wait for me. Let me just walk beside you. Michael, just come with me. We'll go back to the hospital. It will take 5
don't
minutes.
have to go to the hospital.
Just listen to me.
I
for a
don't
minute.
have to go to the hospital. I'm fine. I'm fine.
According to Lisa, Michael became increasingly agitated. 15 minutes later, he left her stranded at a local gas station and drove off erratically. Michael Rosenblum's last words were, "Go to my parents' house. I'll see you there in 2 hours." He has not been seen since.
I figured, well, he took her car and he took off for a day or two, and he'll be back or he'll call. We waited that night. There were no calls. I became seriously worried. My wife felt immediately that it was a terminal situation, that he was dead. I didn't.
He would never have just left. When he left, there was money in his bank account. There was clothes were in his closet. And if he were going to have gone anywhere, he would have said to us, I plan to do such and such, and I'm going to take my money and go. But all of that, his money is still in his bank account. His clothes were in his closet. We're since they're gone. And that wasn't his style, it wasn't his way.
The following day, the Rosenblums filed a missing persons report with the local authorities, the Pittsburgh Police Department, who began an immediate search for the car. Private investigator Stephen Tursack was a detective for the Pittsburgh Police when Michael Rosenblum vanished.
You need a starting point. Any homicide case, your dead body is your starting point. In this case, the car would have been a starting point. So it's important that we find the car as quickly as possible and then take the steps of notifying the media for their help and asking the general public if anybody saw the boy who was in the car, they know what happened to him.
After the Pittsburgh police had searched for 2 weeks, they found no car and no body. So Michael's father began his own search. He offered a reward for information, posted flyers, and traveled as far away as California, visiting with friends Michael may have contacted.
I launched the investigation myself because I was concerned about finding him and seeing if I couldn't put him back on the right track again. So I was after him for myself to kind of soothe things over, put it back together again if I could. It was too late. It was too late. It was just too late.
Three months later, on May 21st, 1980, the police department in Baldwin Borough, a Pittsburgh suburb, notified Lisa that her car had been found. According to official records, the car had been impounded on the day that Michael vanished. Maurice Rosenblum wanted to know what happened during those 3 months.
We couldn't believe that they had that car for 91 days. Absolutely couldn't believe it. The Pittsburgh police had contacted every police department in this area looking for that specific car. And here that car was discovered in the police bonded tow yard less than 3 miles from where we're sitting right now.
I think everybody was quite upset, to say the least. There was a lot of discussion about it in the old terms of policemen. Can you believe this? Can you believe what Baldwin done?
River Road, where Lisa's car was found, connects Baldwin Borough with Pittsburgh's south side. The Baldwin police dispatcher was definitely contacted by the Pittsburgh police when they searched for the car, but no one can say whether the information was ever officially circulated. Just 2 hours after Michael left Lisa, a Baldwin police unit found her car on River Road. 2 of the tires were flat, the keys were gone, and the engine was cool. Michael had vanished into thin air. "15 minutes later, the car was towed to the Baldwin Borough car pound, where it would remain, resting on its bent tire rims for the next 3 months.
Well, no question throws your whole investigation off. If we start in the beginning that we knew that car was on River Road, the whole picture would have changed drastically. My personal feelings is, and being a police officer 28 years, if we had known that that car was found in Baldwin that morning within hours, I strongly believe we would have known by now what had happened to Michael.
When they found the car, after 91 days, my immediate reaction was that he was gone. Dead.
Maurice Rosenblum wanted an explanation, and the Pittsburgh Police Department went to Baldwin Borough to investigate the delay. The Baldwin police claimed that they had mailed Lisa a letter the day after the car was found, saying they had impounded it. Lisa says she never got the letter. The police eventually produced a copy of the letter, but Lisa still insisted she never received it.
In my opinion, they deliberately misled the Pittsburgh police in the search, assuming that my son was never even involved. Why didn't they search for the young lady that owned the car? Because all this was done to cover a more sinister fact, that's why.
Around the same time, Maurice claims he received 2 anonymous phone calls.
The first one came in during the time that the car was gone. They said that he was arrested, and I wrote it off as a crackpot. Hello. Hello. After the car was found, I received a second telephone call, just simply said that your son was arrested by the Baldwin police. Click, they were gone.
For 6 months, Maurice Rosenblum searched for his missing son, Michael. His offer of a big reward had borne no fruit. The only concrete clues were the discovery of the car that Michael had been driving and the 2 mysterious phone calls alleging that Michael had been arrested. Then on July 15, 1980, the Baldwin police issued a warrant for Michael Rosenblum's arrest. He was wanted in connection with a robbery that had taken place in April, 2.5 months after he had vanished.
Now, the big twist in this whole thing was that everybody that's talked to the people who were the victims of the robbery, they both told everybody from day one that the person that came in there was a white man, and he had aviator mirrored sunglasses on that covered high above his eyebrows and down almost to the bridge of his nose. So the only part they actually could see would be the forehead and the chin line. But yet the composite was made without sunglasses. And I have been in police work for 30 years. When I looked at the composite, there's no doubt in my mind that this composite was made from that first flyer put out on Michael Rosenblum back in February. It's just too perfect.
A week later, the warrant was dismissed. Maurice Rosenblum was left with 3 disturbing questions. Why had the Baldwin Police Department failed to respond to the Pittsburgh Police Department's request for information when they had Lisa's car in their possession for 3 months? Why had they issued a warrant for Michael Rosenblum's arrest? And the mysterious phone calls? Was there any truth to the accusation that the Baldwin Police Department arrested Michael the day he disappeared? Maurice took his suspicions to the office of the Pennsylvania Attorney General. The Baldwin Police Department was investigated and cleared of any wrongdoing, but the case would not die. Six and a half years after his son disappeared, Maurice received an anonymous letter urging him to talk to a woman named Jean Hazlitt, who had worked as a dispatcher with the Baldwin police. The letter led to accusations that the department, headed by Police Chief Aldo Gaburi, had mishandled Michael's case.
Mr. Rosenblum showed me an anonymous letter that he had received indicating that if he contacted me, I had information regarding the vehicle that the Baldwin police towed. I then told him that approximately 2 or 3 months after the vehicle had been towed, the chief of police ordered his clerk, Fred Capelli, to type a letter notifying the owner of the vehicle that it had been towed. And the letter was backdated to February 15th, the day after the vehicle was towed.
I didn't take this upon myself. I was instructed to do all this.
Fred Capelli was Chief Gaburi's clerk. He corroborated Hazlitt's story.
Approximately May 20th, the chief told me to type a letter in reference to the car that was towed from River Road. I never thought anything about it. I did what I was told to do. You know, he's my boss, so I did what he told me to do, and I didn't question it.
Fred Capelli claims that after he typed the letter, the chief ordered him to sign the name of Chester Lombardi, the senior officer at the River Road scene that day. Lombardi has since died.
He had asked Chester Lombardi to sign the letter, and Chester refused to sign it because it was backdated. So the chief told me to go ahead and sign Chester Lombardi's name to it, but don't mail it. He said, put it in a file. And that's what I did.
To backdate a letter and place it into the police files is an unusual thing. And in the 9 years that I was involved in police departments, it was not something that I had ever witnessed before.
Based on these new revelations, Maurice wrote an angry letter to the Baldwin Borough Council demanding an investigation into what he thought was a cover-up. In October 1987, the Baldwin Borough Council held a hearing on the matter. They dismissed Chief Gaburi for interfering with the investigation into Michael's disappearance.
When he was discharged, he appealed that to the Civil Service Commission. And their conclusion was that the chief was not guilty.
The Civil Service Commission voted to reinstate Gaburi as police chief, finding there was no misconduct. They have never published a transcript of their hearings, but clearly they didn't believe Fred Capelli.
Why they didn't believe me? Because the chief had friends on that Civil Service Commission. And they wouldn't believe me no matter what I said.
There's been some innuendos made about the way it was handled, and all I can say is this commission rendered its decision strictly on the evidence and the testimony that was presented at the hearing. This matter has never totally been resolved to satisfy anybody in law enforcement who knows what he's doing.
The time that I'll let this go is when it ends. And it's not over yet. It's not over. We're getting close, but it's not over.
Maurice Rosenblum's persistence may have paid off. During the search of the steep hillside last April, a 6-inch fragment of what appears to be a human bone was discovered.
You want to bring it up, Paul?
150 yards.
I'd contended all along that something had happened to him. But the possibility that I might have proof in my pocket makes you kind of sick.
The search also turned up patches of corduroy and a piece of shoe sole. Both items are consistent with the pants and boots Michael Rosenblum was wearing when last seen. These objects were discovered above River Road, overlooking the spot where Lisa's car was abandoned over 8 years ago. Last month, we examined the strange disappearance of Roger Kane, a 62-year-old father of 7 from Los Angeles, California. On February 19, 1986, Roger Kane told his sister that he was going to a local hardware store. His family never saw him again. A month after his disappearance, Roger's car was found. Inside were many of his important papers, including the deed to his property, as well as his glasses and false teeth. Roger Kane's family believes he is alive and may be suffering from some form of amnesia.
I don't give up. I still pray that I find him somewhere one day. I just feel it within my heart.
Update, Topeka, Kansas. The night after our broadcast, police received a call from a man who believed he recognized Roger Kane as a local resident named Elmer Jackson.
The caller said that when he seen him on TV that he was positive it was him. And in questioning him, that's when he come up with the mannerisms, the fact that he had no dentures at that time, a scar on his body, which I don't think anybody probably knew except maybe the Los Angeles police and the relatives.
Acting on the caller's tip, police attempted to locate Elmer Jackson, only to discover he had disappeared. Within days, Roger Kane's son, Lynn, flew to Topeka and joined the police search.
From what I know, he's been in the area about a year and a half, and a truck driver picked him up, decided to name him Elmer, and gave him his last name, which was Jackson, so he goes by Elmer Jackson. He's been working several jobs, or side jobs here and there, laying bricks and things like that.
Lynn Kane and the Topeka police canvassed the neighborhood where Elmer Jackson was last seen. They passed out flyers of Roger Kane's picture, but were unable to locate him.
It's been the best lead so far, or the only lead for us right at this point. And we're unsuccessful today, but maybe tomorrow, or days to come.
On July the 29th, 1988, a brazen daylight robbery took place in a suburb of Palm Beach, Florida. The thief had a key to the house. He was highly selective and seemed to know just what he wanted. Not one fingerprint was left behind. It was a quintessential inside job. At the door, the thief paused long enough to leave a note for his victim. He signed it L. The active social life and the warm, healthy climate of Florida make it a welcome new home for retiring senior citizens. Many of them are widows and divorcees who often hope to remarry. And in fact, love does bloom frequently in the warm Florida sunshine. But sometimes these widows and divorcees become easy marks for a particularly sleazy type of con man. A con man who moves in on their emotions and makes off with their cash.
Okay, we're gonna speed it up for you with a little shuffle. Let's all get up and dance.
On May the 20th, 1988, a widow who was asked that her identity not be revealed went to a Friday night singles dance at St. Mary's Church in West Palm Beach. We will call her Mrs. K. Eligible men were not plentiful at these dances, So when a good-looking man named Arthur Frankfurt approached Mrs. Kay and asked her to dance, she was flattered.
Good evening.
Oh, good evening.
My name is Art Frankfurt.
Hello.
And yours?
Emily.
Nice to meet you, Emily. Would you like to have this dance?
I'd be delighted.
When I first saw him sitting up against the wall, I thought he was too old. You know, it is a singles dance, and you do look him over. After he'd asked me to dance, I realized he wasn't as old as I thought he first appeared.
You know, when you walked across that floor.
Mrs. Kay and Arthur Frankfurt danced every dance that Friday evening at St. Mary's Church. It was the beginning of a 2-month whirlwind romance.
From the day that I met him till the time that he left, never once was I suspicious of any move that he made as far as to question his character or who he was, and that he was a liar and a thief.
Frankfurt told Mrs. Kay he was a geologist. He said he had worked for the government, primarily in Alaska, and had just retired after 21 years of service. He told her he owned a house and several other rental properties in nearby towns and lived off that income in addition to his retirement pay.
So one night he come home and he said that instead of renting another place for himself, he thought it would be better if he lived here. Once he moved in, it was great. I would come home from work, he'd have my dinner ready. He would do the grocery shopping, he would make dinner. He would clean the house, vacuum the house. There was no reason to have anticipated what he did. He came to the house one day with money. It was wrapped in a plastic grocery bag, and he said that he'd sold the house, that he'd rented it out with the option to buy. He asked me if I would put it away for safekeeping.
I'd like to ask you to put it in the safe.
It's a lot of money, but I'd like to give you the combination so you can...
No. Don't worry about the combination, please.
I offered him the safe combination because it was his money, and he refused the combination. He said he didn't really want it.
Okay, dear. All right.
Thank you.
Eventually, Arthur Frankfurt did allow Mrs. Kay to give him the combination to her safe.
You know, Art, I'm getting very excited about it.
By the end of July, Mrs. Kay and Frankfurt had lived together for 1 month and had settled into a comfortable domestic routine.
When I came home from work that night, we started to play gin, and during the course of the gin game, he stopped what he was doing and he says to me,
Emily,
Yes?
you really love me.
Yes, I do. Very much.
I guess that means I can get away with anything.
At that time, I thought he meant the gin game because he would like to try to cheat. He had to win.
The day after their card game, Mrs. Kay arrived home to find the bed she shared with Arthur unmade.
My bed's always made. Either Art made it or I made it, whoever was last up. Even then, it did not appear out of the ordinary to me. Until the time that I walked into my closet to change my clothes and discovered all the clothes from the closet missing. And then I realized that he had left.
Mrs. Kay was heartbroken. On the hall table, she found a note. The note Arthur Frankfurt left said, "Sorry, things too possessive. L," which was their code for love. Then Mrs. Kay remembered giving him the combination to her safe.
I didn't realize until the time that I read the note and went back and opened the safe. And then I discovered that I was robbed.
Her most expensive jewelry, valued at $4,500, was gone. Also missing were several items that had belonged to her late husband: his wedding ring, handgun, work ID card, and driver's license renewal form. Mrs. Kay notified the authorities.
It took a lot of courage to call the police. I wasn't in a hurry. I didn't want to say it out loud to myself that Art was who he was.
Detective David Hoyt came up with sordid background information on this senior citizen, Don Juan.
Arthur Frankfurt was wanted for check forgery,
Also, burglary to a condominium. He's using a AKA, or also known as, James Ferguson.
Police also learned that Mrs. K was not Arthur Frankfurt's only victim. The president of a senior Olympic center, where Frankfurt worked for a short time, remembers receiving telephone calls from 3 women who had been conned by Arthur Frankfurt.
And they took me into their confidence, admitting that they had invited him to live with them. They were sexually involved with him, and it made them very, very vulnerable, of course. And of course, he stole everything he could lay his hands on when he was in their home.
Arthur Fielding Frankfurt preys on the emotions of women in their late 50s, early 60s, often passes himself off at 65 years of age. In reality, he is 77. This is sort of a game to him, and I know he's probably somewhere else in the United States preying on other women the same way.
Arthur Frankfurt is 6 feet tall, weighs about 165 pounds, and has gray hair and blue eyes. He has been known to use the alias of James Ferguson and may now be using the alias of Andrew Kearns, posing as a widower from West Palm Beach. He would have the identification papers and wedding rings to substantiate this false identity. Update. Within minutes of our broadcast, 2 viewers called our 800 number to report that they recognized Arthur Frankfurt.
The individual said, "I know where Arthur Frankfurt is. I'm his ex-brother-in-law. My name's Floyd Meadows." I asked him if he had ever seen this Arthur Frankfurt do magic. He said, yes, he did, and he does it very well. This is one of the keys that I never released to the press or any other media, that Arthur Frankfurt does magic. We received another call about 20 minutes later from a white female. Says, Arthur Frankfurt lives next door to me in Whitley, Kentucky. This was the confirmation call that I was looking for. At that time, I knew we had our man.
2 hours later, Frankfurt was arrested at his home in Kentucky by the McCreary County Sheriff and Kentucky State Troopers. He was living under the assumed name James Ferguson with his new wife of 2 months. During a search of Frankfurt's house, police uncovered several identification and credit cards with different aliases. They also found a handgun that may have been stolen from Mrs. K's home.
We got other calls from women that say, yes, I've been married to this man. I've divorced him. He's left me holding the bag. And what I need is for the people that have been victimized by Arthur Frankfurt to come forward. It's time for the public to stand up and say, hey, we've had enough of Arthur Frankfurt. This man has preyed on the public long enough.
For every mystery, there is someone, somewhere, who knows the truth. Perhaps that someone is watching. Perhaps it's you.